The thick smoke filled every corner of the burning apartment building. Firefighter John Martinez moved carefully through the dark hallway on the 10th floor. His flashlight cut through the black smoke like a knife. The building's fire alarms screamed in his ears, but he was listening for something else. Any sign of life. Then he heard it. A strange, high-pitched sound he had never heard before. It wasn't human, but it was definitely a cry for help. John pressed his radio button. "This is Martinez. I'm hearing something on the 10th floor, east side. Going to check it out." The smoke was getting thicker. John stayed low, moving towards the sound. The floor beneath his feet creaked with every step. The building wouldn't hold much longer. He knew they were running out of time. The cry came again, louder this time. It was coming from apartment 1012. John reached the door and found it was hot to the touch. "Fire department." He shouted, but there was no response. Just that strange crying sound. With one powerful kick, John broke down the door. What he saw inside made him freeze for a moment. Through the smoke, he saw two figures huddled in the corner. They weren't human. The larger figure was clearly a female alien. Her skin was a pale blue color, and she had large, silver eyes that reflected his flashlight. In her arms, she held a small child who looked just like her. The child was making the crying sound John had heard. The mother alien backed further into the corner when she saw John. She held her child tighter and made a series of clicking sounds. Her silver eyes were full of fear. John could see why. Her child's leg was badly hurt. John held up his hands to show he meant no harm. "It's okay," he said slowly, even though he knew they probably couldn't understand English. "I'm here to help." He pointed to his firefighter badge and then to them, trying to communicate his intentions. A loud crack echoed through the building. The floor shifted beneath them. They were running out of time. John had to get them out now, but the mother was still afraid. He could see it in her eyes. Thinking quickly, John took off his oxygen mask. Moving slowly, he held it out to the mother, pointing at her child first. The mother looked at the mask, then at her crying child. The smoke was getting to them. The child's crying was getting weaker. After what felt like forever, but was probably only seconds, the mother reached out and took the mask. She quickly put it on her child's face. The little one's crying became clearer, stronger. John smiled and gave her a thumbs up. Then he pointed to the door and made a walking motion with his fingers. The mother seemed to understand. She nodded and started to stand up, still holding her child close. Another crack. This time, part of the ceiling fell behind them. The mother jumped and made more clicking sounds, faster and higher pitched. She was panicking. John held out his arms, offering to carry the child. The mother hesitated for just a moment, then carefully handed over her little one. The child was surprisingly light in John's arms. Its silver eyes looked up at him with trust, even though it had never seen a human before. The oxygen mask covered most of its small face, but John could see it was no longer crying. "Let's get you both out of here," John said, leading the way. The mother stayed close behind him, one hand always touching her child. They moved as fast as they could through the smoke-filled hallway. John's radio crackled. "Martinez, what's your status?" "Building's becoming unstable. You need to get out now." "On my way down," John replied. "I've got 2 people with me. 1 injured child. We'll need medical support at the exit." As they reached the stairwell, John could hear the building groaning around them. Parts of it were already starting to collapse. But now he had a mission. Get this alien mother and child to safety. He didn't know their story, why they were on Earth, or why they were alone in that apartment. But none of that mattered right now. What mattered was that they needed help, and he was there to give it. That's what being a firefighter was all about. Helping anyone in need, no matter who or what they were. As they started down the stairs together, John knew this was just the beginning of a much bigger story. The stairwell was like a chimney of smoke and heat, John Martinez held the alien child close to his chest, making sure the oxygen mask stayed firmly in place. The mother followed right behind them, her silver eyes glowing through the darkness. Her footsteps made strange clicking sounds against the metal stairs. John realized her feet weren't like human feet at all. Suddenly, the whole building shook. The mother let out a musical cry of fear. John turned to her and pointed upward. Through gaps in the smoke, they could see the ceiling starting to crack. Pieces of concrete were falling around them. "We can't use these stairs anymore," John said, mostly to himself. The mother might not understand his words, but she understood his tone. She made a series of rapid clicking sounds that somehow seemed like questions. John looked around quickly. They were between the 8th and 7th floors. He remembered something from his building inspection last month. There was a maintenance bridge on the 8th floor that connected to the building next door. It was their best chance. He pointed to the 8th floor door and then made a bridge shape with his hands. The mother's eyes widened. She reached out and touched her child's face gently, then nodded to John. She understood this was their only option. As they pushed through the door onto the 8th floor, John's radio crackled to life. "Martinez, where are you? The building's going down. Get out now." "Negative," John replied. "Taking the maintenance bridge on 8. Have medical ready at the other building." He didn't mention that his passengers were aliens. That would only complicate things. The hallway was filled with thick, black smoke. The mother started coughing. The smoke was getting to her. Without hesitation, John handed her child back and pulled off his protective jacket. He wrapped it around the mother's shoulders, pointing to the special material. She pulled it tight around her face, understanding. They moved as fast as they could down the hallway. The floor was hot under their feet, and John could hear the fires raging behind the walls. His years of experience told him they had minutes, maybe less. Then they saw it. The maintenance bridge. It was simple, just a metal walkway with railings that connected to the building next door. But right now, it looked like a golden path to safety. John tried the door. It was locked. Of course it was locked. It was only for maintenance workers. He was about to break it down when the alien mother touched his arm. She pointed to her hand, which was now glowing with a soft blue light. John stepped back, amazed. The mother pressed her glowing hand against the lock. There was a soft humming sound, and then a click. The door swung open easily. She made a sound that almost seemed like a laugh at John's surprised expression. But there was no time to be amazed. As soon as they stepped onto the bridge, they could feel it swaying in the wind. The child whimpered behind its oxygen mask. 40 feet below, fire trucks and ambulances filled the street. They were halfway across when the worst happened. A massive explosion rocked the burning building. The maintenance bridge shuddered violently. John looked back and saw parts of the building starting to collapse. The mother screamed, a sound like breaking glass. The bridge was pulling away from the burning building, its supports failing. They had seconds. "Run," John shouted, grabbing the mother's arm. They sprinted across the swaying bridge. The child clung to its mother, silver eyes wide with terror. Behind them, metal screamed as the bridge began to tear away. With one final burst of speed, they reached the other side. John yanked open the door, practically throwing them through it. He dove in after them, just as the bridge broke away completely, crashing to the street below. They lay on the floor of the safe building, all three of them breathing heavily. The mother was making soft, musical sounds that might have been crying or laughing, maybe both. The child had finally let go of the oxygen mask and was making similar sounds. John sat up slowly, checking them both for injuries. The mother was still wearing his firefighter jacket, and somehow that sight made everything feel more real. He had just rescued 2 aliens from a burning building. They had survived because they worked together, trusted each other, despite being from different worlds. The mother stood up shakily and helped her child stand too. Then she did something unexpected. She reached out and touched John's face with her glowing blue hand. A feeling of warmth and gratitude washed over him. He didn't need to understand her language to know what she was saying. "Thank you." The moment was broken by the sound of running footsteps. Other firefighters and paramedics were coming. The mother quickly pulled John's jacket closer around her, trying to hide her alien features. John stood up and moved in front of them protectively. He didn't know what would happen next, but he knew one thing. He was responsible for these two now. Whatever came next, he would help them through it. Sometimes the greatest adventures start with a simple act of kindness, even if that kindness is shown to someone from another world. The emergency room of City Central Hospital was chaos. Doctors and nurses rushed around, dealing with victims from the apartment fire. John Martinez stood protectively next to the curtained-off area where the alien mother and child were hiding. He had managed to get them in through a back entrance, away from curious eyes. Dr. Sarah Chen, the head of emergency medicine, stared at her unusual patients with a mixture of wonder and concern. The mother still wore John's firefighter jacket, but had pulled back the hood to reveal her blue-tinted skin and silver eyes. Her child lay on the hospital bed, making soft, musical sounds of pain. "I've never seen anatomy like this," Dr. Chen whispered, studying the child's injured leg. "Their bone structure is completely different from ours." She reached out to touch the wound, but her hand passed through an invisible barrier. The mother's hands were glowing blue again. "She's protecting her child," John explained. "You need to show her you want to help." He remembered how he had gained their trust during the fire. He took off his badge and handed it to the mother, then pointed to Dr. Chen's medical badge. The mother's silver eyes darted between them, understanding slowly dawning. The protective barrier flickered and disappeared. The mother made a series of melodic clicks that sounded apologetic. Dr. Chen smiled warmly and began examining the child's leg. "The burn patterns are unusual," she noted. "Their skin seems to react differently to heat than ours." She opened a drawer and pulled out some standard burn medication, but the mother quickly shook her head. She reached into a hidden pocket and pulled out a small crystal-like object. The crystal glowed with the same blue light as the mother's hands. She placed it gently on her child's wound. The child's pain sounds immediately lessened. Dr. Chen watched in fascination as the burned skin began to heal itself, far faster than any human medicine could manage. "Remarkable," Dr. Chen breathed. "Their medical technology is years ahead of ours." She made some notes on her tablet, then paused. "But we can't put this in the official records, if people found out." A commotion outside interrupted her. Through the curtain, they could hear angry voices. "We know you brought them here, Martinez. The whole fire department's talking about it. We have a right to know what's going on." John recognized the voice. Mike Davidson, a reporter from the local news who was always chasing sensational stories. The mother's eyes went wide with fear, and she pulled her child close. The crystal's blue glow flickered anxiously. "Stay here," John said firmly, making a staying motion with his hands. He stepped outside the curtain, closing it carefully behind him. Davidson was there with his camera crew, trying to push past hospital security. "Martinez, is it true? Did you rescue aliens from the fire? The public has a right to know." "All I rescued were residents of the building," John said calmly. "Now, this is a hospital. People are trying to recover. Show some respect." But Davidson wasn't giving up. "We have witnesses. They saw something on that maintenance bridge, something not human." His voice carried through the emergency room, making other patients and staff turn to look. Behind the curtain, the mother was trembling. Her child had stopped making sounds entirely, sensing the danger. Dr. Chen stood in front of them protectively, but she knew she couldn't hide them forever. Then something unexpected happened. Other fire victims from the apartment building began speaking up. "Leave them alone," shouted an elderly woman in a hospital bed. "Those aliens you're hunting. They helped my grandson study for his math tests. They're good neighbors." "Yeah," called another patient. "The mother brings us homemade food sometimes. Sure, it glows blue, but it's delicious." More voices joined in, defending their alien neighbors. John realized the mother and child weren't as isolated as they'd thought. They had built a community, made friends who were willing to protect them. Davidson looked around, confused by the unexpected resistance. His camera crew seemed uncomfortable. Hospital security started moving them toward the exit. Back behind the curtain, the mother was crying. Tears that glowed like tiny stars. But they weren't tears of fear anymore. Through gestures and Dr. Chen's tablet, she began to tell her story. She drew pictures of her home planet, destroyed by war. She showed them how she and her child had fled across the galaxy, finding refuge on Earth. The apartment building had been their home for the past year, where they slowly built a new life among humans who accepted them. Dr. Chen looked at her notes, then at the healing crystal. "We could learn so much from each other," she said softly. The mother nodded, understanding the sentiment if not the words. She took the crystal and broke off a small piece, offering it to the doctor. John watched this exchange with growing hope. Yes, there would be challenges ahead. Yes, there were people like Davidson who would fear what they didn't understand. But there were also people like Dr. Chen, the apartment residents, and himself. People who saw past differences to the humanity, or alienity, within. The child had fallen asleep on the hospital bed, its leg almost completely healed. The mother stroked its head gently, humming a melody that seemed to make the air shimmer with blue light. Dr. Chen carefully documented the healing process on her tablet, marking the file as confidential. Outside, the hospital was quieting down. The drama with Davidson was over, but John knew this was just the beginning. Sooner or later, the world would know about these refugees from the stars. But when that day came, they wouldn't face it alone. For now, though, they were safe. The mother had stopped crying, her silver eyes full of gratitude as she looked at her sleeping child. She reached out and touched both John's and Dr. Chen's hands. That same feeling of warmth and connection flowed between them. In that moment, species and origins didn't matter. They were simply three people brought together by circumstance, each trying to do what was right. And sometimes, John thought, that was enough to change the world. Night had fallen over City Central Hospital. The mother and child had been moved to a private room in a quiet wing, away from prying eyes. John Martinez sat by the window, watching the city lights while Dr. Chen checked the child's fully healed leg. The mother sat nearby, her silver eyes reflecting the moonlight as she wove patterns of blue energy between her fingers. The peace was shattered by an alert on John's phone. His friend in the police department had sent him security camera footage from outside the hospital. The images showed men in black suits moving through the parking lot with strange devices in their hands. The devices emitted a faint purple glow. Energy scanners. The mother clicked suddenly in broken English, surprising both John and Dr. Chen. They hadn't known she could speak their language at all. "They track our kind." The child whimpered and curled closer to its mother. The healing crystal on the bedside table pulsed with an anxious blue light. Outside, a black van pulled into the parking lot. "Who are they?" John asked, moving closer to the window. The mother's hands stopped weaving energy patterns, and her silver eyes darkened with fear. "The hunters," she whispered. "They find refugees, sell us to highest bidder." She pulled something from beneath her clothes, a small pendant that projected a holographic image. It showed her and her child, along with a tall, proud-looking male alien. "My mate, he fight them. They kill him." Dr. Chen gasped as understanding dawned. "You're not just refugees from a war. You're hiding from an interstellar trafficking ring." The mother nodded sadly. The child reached for the hologram of its father, small hands passing through the light. The image flickered, showing more scenes. A beautiful blue world, cities of crystal. Then destruction as ships with purple energy weapons filled the sky. A commotion in the hallway interrupted the moment. Hospital security was arguing with someone. Through the door's window, they could see men in black suits showing some kind of badges. "Government credentials," John muttered. "But something's not right." He'd worked with real government agents before. These men moved differently, more like predators than officials. The mother's hands began to glow bright blue. She pressed them against the wall, and suddenly symbols appeared, flowing like water across the surface. "Warning system," she explained. "My people's technology. They are close." Dr. Chen moved quickly, pulling out her phone. "I have an idea." She called the hospital administrator, speaking rapidly. "Sir, we need to initiate Protocol 17 immediately." "Yes, the quarantine protocol." "No, sir, I can't explain everything right now, but I need you to trust me." Alarms began blaring throughout the hospital. Automated announcements declared a medical quarantine, ordering all non-essential personnel to evacuate. The men in black suits were caught in the flood of people leaving the building. But they weren't giving up. Their purple scanners were glowing brighter, pointing directly at the room. The mother's warning symbols turned red. "They're blocking all exits," John said, checking his phone. "We need another way out." The child tugged at its mother's sleeve and pointed to the ceiling. The mother's eyes widened. She raised her hands, and more symbols appeared above them. "Old tunnels," she said. "We found them when we first hid here. Hospital built on ancient underground network." Dr. Chen quickly pulled up the hospital's original blueprints on her tablet. "She's right. There's a whole system of maintenance tunnels from the 1950s. They were sealed off decades ago, but they connect to the old subway system." The sound of footsteps grew closer. The purple glow from the hunter's scanners was visible under the door now. The mother pressed her healing crystal into Dr. Chen's hands. "Thank you," she said softly. "Remember us." But John stepped forward. "No," he said firmly. "You're not doing this alone anymore." He pulled out his firefighter's radio. "This is Martinez. I need every off-duty firefighter at the old Parker Street subway station. No questions, no uniforms. Just come." The mother's eyes widened in surprise. Dr. Chen nodded firmly. "I'm calling every doctor I trust. We'll create a diversion here." The child suddenly stood up on its newly healed leg. It placed its small hand against the wall, and to everyone's amazement, its touch created new symbols, different from its mother's. "Child of two worlds," the mother explained proudly. "Earth changes us, makes us stronger." The wall silently slid open, revealing a dark tunnel. At the same moment, the door burst open. Men with purple scanners rushed in, but found only Dr. Chen calmly writing in a medical chart. The healing crystal sat innocently on the empty bed, its blue light pulsing like a heartbeat. Deep in the tunnels, John led the mother and child through the darkness. The child's symbols provided soft blue light to guide them. The mother's warning system tracked the hunters' movements above them. They were running out of time. But they weren't running away. Not this time. In the old subway station, dozens of firefighters were gathering. Police officers John trusted. Doctors Chen had called. Regular people from the apartment building. All of them ready to help. The mother stopped, overwhelmed by the sight of so many humans willing to protect them. The child's symbols swirled around them, creating patterns of both alien and human design, a perfect blend of both worlds. "Your mate fought alone," John said gently. "You don't have to. Earth is your home now, and we protect our own." Above them, the hunters were discovering that their prey wasn't so helpless anymore. The chase was becoming a confrontation, and this time, the hunted had an army of their own. The old Parker Street subway station had transformed. Blue light from the child's symbols danced across the abandoned platforms, mixing with the flashlights of dozens of human allies. The mother stood in the center of it all, her silver eyes glowing as she pressed her hands against the ground. A holographic map spread out from her touch, showing the tunnels and the hunters' movements above. "There's something you need to see," she said, her English becoming clearer with each word. She pulled out her pendant again, but this time, instead of just projecting images, it split open to reveal a crystal data core. "My mate, my Zarin." He discovered their secret. The hologram expanded, filling the station with scenes from their homeworld. But these weren't just memories. They were evidence. They showed the hunters' organization, their bases hidden on multiple planets, their connections to corrupt officials on Earth and other worlds. They call themselves the Void Corp, the mother explained, her voice trembling. They don't just hunt refugees, they create them. They start wars, destroy worlds, then profit from those who flee. The images showed massive ships with purple energy weapons, the same energy the hunters used in their scanners. John watched in horror as the story unfolded. Your husband wasn't just killed for protecting you. He was their accountant, the mother said, surprising everyone with the human term. Zarin found proof of their crimes: banking records, weapon sales, political bribes. Her hands glowed blue as she touched the data core, revealing more detailed files. He sent copies to authorities on 12 worlds before they caught him. The child stepped forward, touching the hologram of its father. Where its small hand met the light, new information appeared. The child remembers, the mother explained proudly. Our young ones store memories in their genetic code. Zarin gave our little one a final gift: everything he knew. Purple light burned through the ceiling of the old subway tunnels like deadly rain. The hunters were breaking through. But in the darkness below, an extraordinary alliance waited. The mother's blue energy merged with her child's hybrid symbols, creating protective barriers around their human defenders. John Martinez stood at the front, his firefighters' courage matched by alien technology. They're using quantum disruptors, the mother warned, reading the patterns in her warning system. Weapons that damage the space between spaces. Her silver eyes narrowed. Weapons they used on our world. The child stepped forward, its small hands pressed against the tunnel wall. Suddenly, every electronic device in the tunnel network came alive with a strange power. Phones, radios, flashlights, all pulsing with a combination of blue alien energy and Earth's own digital signals. Like father, like child, the mother said proudly. Zarin was master of information flow. Our little one has same gift, but different. Changed by Earth, made stronger. The first hunter dropped through the ceiling, purple scanner raised like a weapon. He froze at the sight before him. Dozens of humans standing with the aliens, all connected by flowing streams of blue light and hybrid symbols. Impossible, he growled, his voice distorted by his helm. These primitives shouldn't be able to. His scanner exploded in his hands. The child's symbols had infected it, turning Void Corp's own technology against them. More hunters dropped down, but their weapons and scanners were useless, corrupted by the hybrid network. You hunt refugees, the mother said, her voice carrying with newfound strength. Make them weak, afraid. But Earth teaches different lesson. Here, we learn to stand together. Dr. Chen's voice came through the network devices. Financial data is uploading to every major news outlet and law enforcement agency worldwide. Void Corp's accounts are being frozen as we speak. The lead hunter removed his helm, revealing pale, scarred features. You think this matters? Void Corp has destroyed worlds. Earth is nothing to us. The child suddenly made a musical sound, not of fear, but of discovery. Its symbols revealed hidden data in Zarin's files. The hunters' ships above the city, cloaked but present, ready to attack if their ground team failed. But the mother smiled. My mate thought of everything. She raised her pendant, and its data core pulsed with new energy. Zarin left us more than evidence. He left us codes. Through their hybrid network, they could see it happening. Above the city, the massive hunter ships were losing power, their cloaking fields failing. Their weapon systems turned against each other, decades of carefully hidden operations exposed to the universe. The hunters attacked in desperate fury. Purple energy beams cut through the air, but the mother's barriers held. The child's symbols created phantom images, confusing their attackers, and the humans fought back with their own strength. Firefighters, police officers, and ordinary citizens protecting their alien friends. John led the charge, using his knowledge of the tunnels to outmaneuver the hunters. The mother's energy formed bridges and barriers, transforming the battlefield. The child's hybrid technology let them see through walls, predict enemy movements. But the lead hunter had one last weapon. He pulled out a small purple crystal, a quantum bomb. If we can't have them, no one will. Time seemed to slow. The mother's silver eyes met her child's. In that moment, they both knew what to do. Together, they reached out, their combined powers creating something entirely new. The bomb's purple energy met a wall of blue light, but this wasn't just alien power. It was Earth's digital network, human determination, and alien technology, all working as one. The child's hybrid symbols rewrote the bomb's quantum structure. The mother's energy contained its blast. When the dust settled, the hunters lay defeated. Their ships above were exposed, their organization in ruins. And in the old subway tunnel, humans and aliens stood together, undefeated. The child ran to its mother, their silver eyes glowing with joy and relief. The pendant's data core projected one last image, Zarin, smiling proudly at his family. His final message played. Connection is stronger than fear. Love is stronger than hate. Remember this, my loves. John looked at the captured hunters. Your organization is finished. Earth isn't the primitive world you thought it was. And these aren't the helpless refugees you're used to hunting. Dr. Chen's voice came through again. All major Earth governments are responding. The evidence is undeniable. Void Corp's entire network is exposed, not just here, but across the galaxy. The mother stood tall, her blue energy still flowing. Zarin's dream was peace between worlds. Today, we make it real. She looked at her child, then at their human allies. Earth is not weak. Earth is special. Here, we learn greatest power, working together. The child's symbols formed one last pattern, a perfect blend of alien script and human letters, spelling out a simple truth: home. As sirens sounded above and official forces moved in to arrest the hunters, John realized this was more than just a victory. It was a beginning. Earth's first real step into a larger universe, not through war or fear, but through compassion and cooperation. The mother took her child's hand, their silver eyes reflecting the blue light of their powers. They weren't refugees anymore. They were pioneers, bridges between worlds. And around them stood their human family. Proof that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from running or hiding, but from standing together. The hunters had sought to exploit the differences between worlds. Instead, they had forced those worlds to discover their common ground. In trying to destroy hope, they had only made it stronger. Dawn broke over the city, painting the sky in shades of purple and blue that seemed to mirror the recent battle. The old subway station had become a hub of activity as government officials, media, and curious onlookers tried to make sense of the night's events. But in a quiet corner of City Central Hospital, away from the chaos, a more intimate scene was unfolding. The mother and child sat in Dr. Chen's office, their silver eyes reflecting the morning light. John Martinez stood by the window, watching as news helicopters circled the exposed Void Corp ships now visible above the city. The mother's pendant projected a steady stream of data as authorities from Earth and other worlds coordinated their response to Void Corp's exposed network. Look, the child said suddenly, speaking English for the first time. Its small hand created symbols that merged with the hospital's computer systems, showing news feeds from across the galaxy. Dozens of worlds were reporting the same story. Void Corp's fall, the liberation of refugee camps, the arrest of corrupt officials. The mother touched her pendant, and Zarin's image appeared one more time. But now, instead of showing memories of loss, it displayed his hidden message to the universe, detailed plans for helping refugees, establishing new homes, building bridges between worlds. He never lost hope, the mother said softly. Even at the end, he planned for a better future. Her blue energy swirled gently, no longer needed for defense, but now creating beautiful patterns in the air. He would be proud of Earth, proud of how you protect those who need help. Dr. Chen entered with a stack of official-looking documents, The World Council has been in emergency session all night, she announced. They've created something new, the Interstellar Refugee Protection Act. And, she smiled, they want you both to help implement it. The child's symbols danced with excitement, creating a miniature holographic display of Earth surrounded by stars. Each star represented a potential refugee sanctuary, places where other aliens could find the same welcome they had found. John stepped forward, holding his own documents. The fire department is establishing a new division, Extraterrestrial Emergency Services. We want to make sure we're ready to help anyone who comes to Earth, no matter what world they're from. He grinned. And we need advisors who understand both sides. The mother's silver eyes filled with glowing tears of joy. She reached out, touching both John and Dr. Chen's hands, sharing her emotions directly. The child added its own touch, and suddenly they could all see a vision of the future, Earth becoming a beacon of hope in the galaxy, a place where differences were celebrated and connections made worlds stronger. But the story wasn't just about grand cosmic changes. Throughout the city, smaller transformations were taking place. The neighbors from the apartment building were already planning to rebuild, this time with sections specifically designed for alien residents. The child's school was developing new programs to help alien children adapt while sharing their unique gifts. The mother's healing crystals were being studied by Earth scientists, leading to breakthroughs in medical technology. The child's hybrid symbols were revolutionizing Earth's digital networks, creating new ways for different species to communicate and understand each other. In the hospital lobby, a memorial was being built, not just for Zarin, but for all those who had suffered under Voidcourt's cruelty. The child contributed to its design, creating symbols that told stories of loss, courage, and hope in a language both humans and aliens could understand. But what about others? The child asked, its English improving with each word. Others like us, still hiding, still afraid. John smiled and pulled out his phone, showing messages from firefighters and police officers across the world. We're ready for them now. Earth's protectors will help anyone who needs it. Dr. Chen added, and your mother's warning system is being adapted for global use. No hunter will ever be able to secretly enter Earth's space again. The mother stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city she now truly called home. Her blue energy merged with the morning sunlight, creating a spectacular display that drew amazed gasps from people below. Time to send message, she said. Her hands glowed as she raised them, and her power reached toward the sky. The child joined her, adding its hybrid symbols to the display. Together, they created something unprecedented, a beacon that could be seen across space, telling other refugees that Earth was a sanctuary. John and Dr. Chen watched in awe as the message spread. Earth's satellites picked up the signal, amplifying it throughout the galaxy. The child's symbols ensured it could be understood by any species. The mother's energy made it impossible for hunters to track or interfere with. In orbit, the captured Voidcork ships were being repurposed as rescue vessels, their purple weapons replaced with blue healing crystals. Earth's first steps into galactic society wouldn't be through war or conquest, but through compassion and protection. The child tugged at its mother's sleeve, pointing to the pendant. Together, they opened its data core one last time. But instead of showing old memories, it now recorded new ones. Their human friends, their Earth home, their victory over fear. They were writing their own story now, adding to Zarin's legacy of hope. This is just beginning, the mother said, looking at her human family. Earth teaches us to be strong, to fight back. Now we teach Earth about wonders of universe. John put his hand on the child's shoulder, and we'll face those wonders together. The child's symbols formed one final message, floating in the air for all to see. 2 worlds, 1 family. Outside, the sun rose fully over the city. Its light caught the blue energy beacon, creating a rainbow that seemed to bridge Earth and sky. Somewhere out there, other refugees would see it and know that they weren't alone anymore. Earth was waiting, ready to protect, ready to welcome, ready to grow. The mother, child, and their human protectors stood together, watching the dawn of this new age. They had started as strangers, alien refugees, and a brave firefighter. Now they were something more. Proof that the strongest bonds aren't formed by blood or species, but by choice, by courage, and by love. The universe was changing, and Earth was leading the way. Not through force or fear, but through the simple, powerful act of helping those in need. It was everything Zarin had dreamed of, everything the mother had hoped for, everything the child would help build. And it was just the beginning.